In this next lesson, we will take a look at some functions that allow us to make a little bit more interesting pictures and combine images in different ways. Let us start by going ahead and doing our require picturing programs. We need to just get in the habit of applying this library or teach pack right from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to work in the interactions window here just to kind of save some space. Up to this point, we've had some image functions like beside that allow us to place one image next to another image. So we can take an image like box of CDs, insert another image like our cheese picture, put them beside one another, and that's exactly what we get. One thing to realize when we put two images next to one another is that they are lined up through their centers. Same thing with the above function, they're lined up through their centers. If we want to find another way to line up these pictures, we can use a function such as beside align. Except this function not only takes images as its arguments, but it also takes in a string, where a string is just a series of characters, a word or a phrase or something like that, enclosed in double quotation marks. So in this case, if we want to align two images next to one another, but make sure they're aligned across the top, we use the function beside align, and our first argument for that function is top, which tells it to align the tops of the two images. Much like you would in, say, a Word document and putting a couple of images next to one another. You can align them in different ways. And there you go. They're aligned at the top. We also have beside align bottom, which aligns the two images in the bottom. Let's see if I can find a couple images that are significantly different sized. So let's do our chicken picture. That's a little bit bigger. And insert image, and let's go ahead and do the cheese also, because that's smaller. So now we're putting the chicken next to the cheese, and it aligns them at the bottoms. Okay. To go along with that, we've got beside align. We can use top for the first string. We can use bottom for the first string. We can also use middle for the first string. And we'll put our chicken and cheese next to one another again. Okay. And this is kind of like the default, where it puts them so the middle of the two of them align. Okay. We also have a function very similar to that with above align. Okay. Except instead of top and bottom, we have left and right. So we can align the lefts of the two images like that. We can align the right sides of the two images like that, or of course we can align the middle of the two images, and that will line them up through the middle. Okay? Try those out on a couple of images of your own. Now, that is showing you how you can use a string as one of the arguments, not just images. Another type that we have that we can use for arguments for functions is a number. If you recall from before, we have a function called rotate. We had used before rotate CW, rotate CCW, and rotate 180. Well, here's a new function that takes in an exact angle in degrees. So if we want to rotate something, say 15 degrees, we can insert an image. Let's go back to my cheese image. We can rotate the cheese 15 degrees. And there it is, rotated 15 degrees. Or if we want to, we can rotate this 45 degrees. Let's go ahead. Take the cheese again. Rotate the cheese 45 degrees. Notice the degrees rotates it to the left or counterclockwise. If we want to rotate it to the right, we do negative 45, and that'll rotate it clockwise 45 degrees. Okay? So here's an example of a function that one of its arguments is a number. Okay? So now we've seen functions that have images as their arguments, strings as the arguments, and numbers as the arguments. Let's look at another one that takes in numbers. Let's do scale. Scale 2 says to take the image and make it twice as large both in the horizontal and vertical directions. Or if we want to do something like half as big, and we can do half as either a decimal, 0.5, or we can do half as a fraction, like such. That'll scale it smaller. Okay. This, of course, will take in decimal values as well, like 1.3. And there's that example. Okay. So, we've seen some functions that take in different arguments, either numbers, images, or strings. That brings us kind of to our next major point here, and you may want to add this to your notes. We have something called data types. Okay. Notice I'm putting this in comments here. We have worked with 3 different data types now to this point. The primary data type we've worked with is images. You'll see me abbreviate that sometimes IMG. Another data type we have worked with is strings. Okay, that can be abbreviated STR. And the third data type we've worked with so far is numbers, abbreviated NUM. So those are the 3 data types that we have experience with. Okay, images, strings, and numbers. We will have a couple other data types that will be built into Racket, as well as being able to define our own data types. Okay. Let's look at one more different new function that we have that takes in a combination of both strings and numbers. And that's a way to present text on the screen. It's a function called text. It starts with a string, whatever string you want to display, in that double quotation marks. Again, strings must always be in the double quotation marks. Then we need a number that says how big we want it to be, so we'll go with 48. We need another string that tells us what color we want it to be in. Okay. We'll get into colors in just a little bit and the different types of colors you can pick, but let's just pick something common like red. So here's text. We're going to display the text hello world, size 48 font, in red. And there it is. Another example, maybe we want to do computer science in size 60 font, and we want it to be blue. There's an example of that. Okay. So try that out a little bit and on some different functions. Okay. One other thing we want to take a look at here is something called a function contract. Let me go back in here and write some more comments. Function contracts. A contract, much like any other contract that you enter into, it is an agreement. It says this is what you're gonna do and what I'm gonna do. A function contract is the same thing. For a function, it says here's the things that I need and here's what I'm gonna produce. Okay. A function contract always takes in this form, and function contracts are usually entered into Racket as a comment. Okay. So the function contract takes in the name of the function, okay, followed by a colon, and then it takes in the data types of the arguments. This is the input or domain of the function, followed by dash dash arrow and the data type of the results, or the output, okay, or the range of the function. For example, we have done the beside function. Beside takes in at least one image. It actually has to have 2 images, I'm sorry. Takes in at least 2 images. Since it can take in more than 2 images, we might put a ... that says it takes in 2 or more images, and then it produces an image. Another example is the rotate function. Rotate took in a number in an image and produced an image. The text function took in several things. It took in a string, a number, another string, and it produced an image. So there's several examples of function contracts. Last thing I want to cover in this part of this lesson is, again, talking about comments. Notice everything I put in here for some notes I put in as comments, so they won't execute when we click run. So all single line comments have a semicolon in front of them. That means none of these lines will execute. If we want to comment out multiple lines of text, and let me go ahead and take out all of these single line comments, and suppose we wanted to comment out all of these lines of text. We could do a multiple line comment by using the # and then a vertical line. The vertical line is the key above the enter key with shift. And then we end it with the vertical line and the # key. Now everything between those two symbols, okay, with the vertical lines being kind of closest to everything you want to comment out, all of those lines are commented out. So we can comment out a paragraph or several lines without having to put a semicolon right at the beginning. Even if some of these lines were already commented out with a semicolon, they stay commented out with the multi-line comments. Okay. Just as a quick review, we had a few functions that we dealt with today, such as beside a line and above a line, as well as rotate, scale, and text. Try out some of these functions and see how they work for you.